Sweet, you're now on 420 TV. Yeah. Waiting on David Dubine to join the show. YOLO. Oh, I'm kind of stoned, so disregard all of that. And here we go. YOLO. Just kidding. Am I recording already? Damn it, already recording. Too late to take all that silliness back. Whoa. Alright, let's see here. I gotta rig up the international Skype exchange here. There we go. We're still 4 minutes away. Get adjusted here. Yeah. Delightful. Awesome sausages. And some coffee too. Yo. Hello, mofo. I'm gonna put this over here. Dum, 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 dum. Whoa. Look at that. Biden asking Congress to extend eviction moratorium without delay as expiration looms. In other words, a bunch of people are going to get kicked out of their places of business and homes and whatnot. Just like I predicted not too long ago. Not too long ago. Maybe last year? What was it, last year? Yeah, I think it was. And then again, a couple times the last couple years. Leading up to, like, now. Probably going to cut all that out. Because I'm stoned. Oops. And my equipment is freezing. Oh yeah, I'm not allowed to broadcast on my channel. That's why I was ill prepared. I'm not broadcasting right now. I'm recording, so I don't know where it's recording on my computer, though. That's the problem. So there may not be enough space, so this may end in a big freeze. Whatever. Where's my coffee? So you guys ready to go and be hungry? Have you guys been reading all the, or hearing all the noise of why there's no food coming in the near future of no food? It's like Walking Dead type here. No shit. It's coming. We're supposed to pretend like it's not coming. I can't say anything, man. You can't say nothing on YouTube. Well, some people can, but not me. I'm not allowed to. If I say it, they say I'm misinforming you. Like as if you can't read for your fucking self. Because you're an idiot. You're the public, so, you can't read for yourself or figure shit out. Whatever. So quiet in here. Without conversation, that is. I'm like 5 minutes early here. Let's go back further. Yeah, sorry about the noise. There we go. Now in a much better position to be breaking live. See if I can't hook all this up right. Whoa. I think their time's like 2 minutes difference or some shit, though. Because you know that made sense. Totally. It's getting interesting out there. Things are becoming mandatory in life. Weird. It's 8:01 Mountain High Time, in case you were wondering. It's 10:01 on the east of coasts. The coast of the east. East Coast. Don't mind me, I'm just looking at the weird effect of manipulating all the doodads in the camera. Like a mad scientist messing with the contrast and the saturations and things to make this weird filter looking thing, but it's not really a filter. However, there are some filters, I think. Not that any of that's relevant to the food shortage. I thought I saw my phone glitch.
Shift affecting global crop output, but very few mainstream media outlets are talking about the most important issue of our time: cold weather crop losses. Our sun is going through a 400-year cycle, which has effects on our weather patterns as our magnetosphere weakens and the jet streams go out of flow. It's not CO2, it's not you, it's the sun. Are you ready to thrive in the grand solar minimum? Then join me for mini Ice Age conversations. I'm your host, David Dubine, creator of the Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age 2015 to 2035 video series. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on this beautiful blue planet that has just started the cataclysm cycle. Pretend you're looking at a beach, beautiful blue turquoise waters, while we go through the doom roll tonight. We just, in earnest, have locked into the new magnetic field forming in the outer solar system from now until 2024. The earthquakes that we just saw up in Alaska, the massive flood events that are happening across the planet, the giant hail pounding the surface of our Earth, upwelling of the crust, the sinkholes, the earth fissures, the earth cracks, and it continues on and on. We're in it now, in earnest, into this magnetic field lock. So this second magnetic field is going to intensify through these next 3 years. So look for governments to behave strangely, as if they aren't already. But the food. Now, I myself have, I do the Adapt 2030 channel on YouTube. I've been in this mind-bending thing for 7 years, looking at this kind of stuff every day. The weather changes, the anomalies, the earth upheaval, the earth changes, all these things. And I sat here today to do this video about China and where they're going to get their food from. And I'm at a loss for words by the end of the day here. I really, really don't get what's going on. It's upticked so fast and so atrociously, all-encompassing everywhere at this time, that something is going on. Originally I kept saying 400-year cycle, 400-year cycle. I am absolutely at the volition now. We are going into a 2,000-year cycle on this turn as we get into this second magnetic field going on here. There's no possible way this is a 400-year cycle. None. Impossible. It is going to be that light. This is a heavier, more powerful cycle, and when I say that, I mean it totally in earnest. And anybody knows my work, I always try to give a no BS assessment here. But if you're going to get on the go and get ready to go, you better put that plan in action like yesterday. We're out of time. This thing is so much more powerful coming in, it's spooking governments across the planet. That's why all these things are happening, and all these things are happening again. We're in 2.0 of the same garbage that didn't work the first time. And now they want us to repeat the same garbage that didn't work the first time, but we need to do it again? Like, what kind of lunacy is that? Unless you're trying to distract the global populace from the things that are happening in space, the things that are happening on the ground, the related electromagnetic effects. Well, I'm looking at petroglyphs coming to life in the sky here, and somehow we're just supposed to sit back and kowtow and obey and don't look and stay inside and don't talk to your neighbors and don't have conversations and don't get ready and don't grow food and don't do anything with your community. Ransom, I'm done. I'm just kind of a little like frazzled today. I just can't even explain. Like, what I saw in China is absolutely impossible. So what's happening over there? And where are they going to get their food? They're not. China has no chance of getting enough food this year to feed the people at all. Like, the things going on in America too. We lost 70% of our wheat crop. 70% of the wheat is bad, poor, very poor condition. It's going to be less than animal food. You're going to turn it into straw and throw it back in the field. And then China's going to come out and they lost everything again. Oh, it's a crazy. We're going into a famine on this planet. No doubt about it. And today, like, really solidified. The time frame is by the end of this year. So Ransom, I'll let you ramble from there. I'm done.
Well, how long do you think it'll be between, the time of people realizing there's a food shortage and them trying to resort all of a sudden at the end of the game to agriculture? I mean, because there's just so many people that don't, they never thought about how to create their own food or what they would eat if there was no food. I know we're hundreds of pounds just laying on the ground that'll be there, summer or winter of edible things right now. It's just whether or not you're willing to eat them and get over the, your normal palette of flavors that you expect to have with a meal. And the way the brain works is you actually crave the last meal that you've had. So if you're stuck on a cycle of, plasticized box food chains, well, for one, you're going to be, getting mad because your favorites aren't on the menu anymore. And then two, you're already probably in a bad position health-wise. And then you also just keep craving that same, nasty, it's fake food, in my opinion. But, if you were eating good, it wouldn't be long until your body was craving to eat real nutrients. So once you got over the changeover to eating just, off the land, so to speak, hopefully, you could develop a green thumb in time, but I don't know. I've been planting a lot of stuff and I've had a lot of failure this year, but, other things that I wasn't expecting are presenting themselves with good opportunities this year. I suggest people, go buy some squash seeds and randomly just get a bunch of stuff that's available, that's fast growing and easy to grow, because they're going to want to eat it later. I'm already seeing it. The store's prices are skyrocketing. The gas prices are skyrocketing. And there's a big distraction with another topic that got me kicked off of YouTube again. That's taking up the headlines.
Throw it here. I mean, we're not on YouTube now. I'm not streaming anything tonight. It goes deep and as gnarly as you want to go.
Well, yeah. So it's not hard for anybody to figure out that there's only one subject being shoved down your throat globally. And that's not the subject you should be paying attention to. You should be paying attention to all the other headlines that, like, you yourself, you see them constantly. And I know from studying news for a long time that when you see a repeated cycle in the news cycle, it's almost like a crystal ball in your face of what they're going to be doing next. And if you're seeing nothing but, like this article I have up right now, it says New Zealand rated best place to survive a global society collapse. And you got to wonder, why are they even talking about that on the headline, for one? And then two, isn't that the place that just gave up all their guns over there? So, there's kind of silly stuff going on, but if you really dive into the real headlines, you'll see that everywhere around the world it's not producing anything close to what we were doing 2 years ago. So everything is not being really produced. The governments know that, and they just have all of these other things for people to pay attention to until the last minute. And everybody knows that the point of no food to the point of craziness and societal collapse is less than 2 weeks. If the water supply somehow got shut off to most places, it's, even less time. How about a week? And then you have all out chaos. And with food shortages, they're going to try to ration people with fast food type stuff, a lot of plasticized foods to keep the masses happy. But eventually, the nutritional, lack of nutrition, I should say, is going to catch up with our country. And every time I say that, when I really realize how malnourished the population is, I always think of the stages of invasion. And what do you do with that? I mean, usually you make sure that the populace is hungry and malnourished so that whenever you do invade, there's no real fight. People are just lethargic and hungry, and they'll take whatever conditions are given to them to eat, which you can tell by our government right now. Not just our government, but governments around the world are saying the same thing. It's the word mandatory. So I guess we're about to have a global discussion on whether or not global governance can mandate an individual's life in any particular country they live in. I think that's where we're going. We're separating into two people, the group people and the individual people, and they're using all of these tools and this cycle just to be the right time to cull the people that they don't want in society.
Yeah, I've been foraging a fair bit of clover lately because, out in the garden, I don't use any pesticides or herbicides on my plants. I try to keep my roots healthy and, add a bunch of, different mycorrhiza and worm castings, kelp, and these things to get the plants super strong immune systems so nothing really hits them. Even the Japanese beetles didn't do much damage this year. They did on the fruit trees, but the regular, what we consider garden plants and arugula lettuces and tomatoes, the Japanese beetles didn't do too much there. But there's always clover growing all around the periphery of it. So I've been picking up a fair bit of clover. It's got a nice little tartness to it. If you're looking for a lemon substitute and you're without lemons or limes, you pick clover leaf. Yeah. And go use that. Make sure you get the long stem off. But, it's got a nice little tartness to it. But to answer that question, Ransom, how long will it be before people realize that they need to grow food? They won't. And they're going to continue to believe that somehow the government is going to come and save them with food lines, food stamp or whatever. You get an extra ration, I'll give you an extra egg for the week, whatever. They're going to continue to believe that into infinitum until they're actually lying on the store starving with that big puffed out stomach, like we saw Sally Struthers asking for $1 a day for the kids in Africa back in the day. Even when they're at that point, they're still going to be looking for a savior hope instead of taking the thing into their own hands. I really don't have any hope anymore for humanity to get, whoever's prepared now is going to get through it. Whoever's not, sorry, you're not going to make it. You're going to get stuck in the hands of the government. You're going to go to a camp, but they're going to do whatever they want with you. And unless you get out of the system, and it's pretty much, you need to get out now. I don't see anything moving forward. I just don't. At the point where everybody is defending the very system that's locking you in place, like all these mandates of things, like this whole lockdown mandate 2.0. Now they're like, you're going to lose your job if you don't get this thing. If you don't get jabbed up, you lose your job. Now, you remember, it was only going to be 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And then it guaranteed, it would never, ever turn into a mandatory thing. Your body, your choice. And here they are now, Google, it's a private company. Apple, it's a private company. They can do whatever they want. They can make their employees get. And then suddenly, Bozo comes out today and says, hey, everybody's got to get vaxxed that works in the government. Like, all federal employees? Yeah. But the post office did a super big stink and said, no way. So what was the message there for me was when a huge group of people like the Postal Union puts up a big stink and now they're the only ones that don't have to get vaccinated, perhaps we should get up in a big group and cause a big stink, because globally what's going on right now, there is a massive pushback, and it's really controlled in the media. When you look at what over this last weekend, just like in China with this floods of how many people perished over there. Oh, they don't want to tell you that 3,000 people drowned in a tunnel over there. No, it was 5. It was the same thing, like tightly controlled information about how many people were going to these protests. Like in Australia, like, was there 3,500 people? No, those videos I saw were like 50, 60,000 people at every one of them. You know, and there's this huge, giant push to control the media narrative, the visual imagery that you're looking at. The visual imagery is tightly controlled now. Because when I see 200,000 people swarming the capital central business district saying, no way, baby, we're not going to do this, versus the news media that says, well, there was 6,000 people downtown, there was 3,000 people downtown. I want to see the pictures, you know, and they always try to cut the pace like the side street of something, you know. We are in bizarro world, and I am of the volition that earthquake today in Alaska was the trigger to set in a full another range of motion of government control, because we've stepped up the electromagnetic coupling through the solar wind and beyond. Because think about it, you know, magnetism is not a linear straight line. It is a torus wave, and each individual day from now, that torus wave interlooping on those outer gas giants is intensifying until it becomes its own magnetic field. Because when the sun's stepping down, that magnetism, where's it going to? It's not going to just disappear. Although the sun lost 20% of its magnetic field. Okay, well, where did that 20% go to? Well, it transited out to the other magnetic field forming out in the outer solar system. We got a new magnetic field tugging on 2 sides of the Earth. Nothing goes to zero. Just like every single massive cataclysmic thing we're seeing, like that hail in Germany, that's the same stuff that was talked about in the modern minimum. That smashed villages into the mud, that they didn't know there was standing wooden structures after these storms. Like those hailstones coming down, each one of those was 2 to 3 pounds, and it ripped apart that part of the city. I was looking at those things going, oh my. It is truly repeating now. It's begun. Like the real big uptick in like super, you cannot deny it anymore. And this CO2 BS, people are going to be way wise past that, because this is way upticking in so far above anything CO2 related. And they're going, oh, see, if it's like this and it's raining this much across the entire planet and we get these big hailstones and earthquakes, what's it going to be like if the temperature rises to 3 degrees Celsius? I'm like, wait a dude, I didn't know CO2 could trigger earthquakes now. And it's this whole garbage regurgitation again of more CO2. Oh, be scared of the CO2. No, you should be scared of the solar wind, the lack of our magnetic field, the cosmic ray density, increasing cloud cover, and governments not warning you that this is all in play and you need to protect your families. That's what you need to be afraid of, is government hiding the information and not letting you protect your families. That's the terrifying part. And, you know, I saw that thing, the news media crawling through all the flood videos and things out of China. Like, they let, oh man, all those people drowned, thousands of people drowned in that tunnel. And they sent the army in to smash up the victims' families to get them out of there waiting to ask questions. And I realize, you know, we always make fun of China, go, well, people are expendable in China, the government doesn't care. You know, you're a Chinese citizen, you're expendable. No, every citizen that's under any government is expendable at this point. That's the realization from today. I'm like, damn, it's really in the earnest uptick and everybody's expendable, so these idiots can try to remain in power. Truly, there's nothing's left. There's all bets off right now. All of them are off. You either prepared or you didn't.
Yeah. And you know, I'm looking, when I look through the headlines, I see all of these triggers that they pull that you know, kind of are backup plans to their other plans. Like, you got, what, billions of mosquitoes now with tampered DNA, and there's so many other things that they've let out into nature, from, you know, foods they were growing to experiments that got out. They've already kind of polluted the genetosphere, I guess you could call that. So they already have backup plans. And then I'm looking at these headlines talking about they want to use the technology that birds have to navigate a new magnetic field. So I read this whole article about this, and they're putting millions of dollars into this, and what they call it is a GPS free navigation in a bird's eye. So basically, they're very interested in the manipulation and changing magnetic field, because they know their GPS equipment may not work properly. It won't work properly. They may not even have satellites up if any kind of real activity from the sun happens. So they want to still be able to navigate the globe. And then you have other stuff like this. You were talking about that, the petroglyphs kind of coming alive off of the stuff and doing electrical displays and magnetic displays. And then you also got people. We're in a really weird time. I mean, just bouncing through the headlines. Rocket Man sighting 5,000 feet up, and then they take a picture of him, and he looks like a lot of these old UFO videos from the 90s, which makes me think that, there have been people flying around in some pretty cool tech suits for some time. And there's another, like that predictive programming that you were talking about, pee in your face, and it's pretty funny. Then you got military already enforcing lockdown in certain countries over their wanting to keep power. You see all kinds of people catching what supposedly they were trying to prevent getting even after they took the medications. You see people like in the U.S., a State Department guys talking about that they want to build little bubble cities for people that have been medicated so that they can keep out the unmedicated people. And then, like you said, you just see this freakish stuff all over Europe, and you can tell that the weather is changing in certain places, which makes you think that, maybe these countries already knew that. That's why they let floods of people kind of move in. I mean, look at the names. When you go down the list of headlines of countries that are experiencing severe weather or massive destruction, like Italy, Germany, etc. It goes down the list here. You see all these floods in Germany, Turkey, Belgium, wildfires everywhere all over Europe, and church fires too. And the same pattern is starting in the United States and Canada. So we're about to repeat that same pattern of a bunch of catastrophic events and societal changes right here. If you haven't even been noticing, we've been experiencing it already for I think the last decade. If you really look at the steps taken by the government, if not really the last 2 decades, this is all part of the same plan, and we're just kind of coming into it where the public can finally see it.
It might be good if they keep all the vaccinated inside the giant bubble in the city and lock them all in so I can continue to grow my food and they don't come out asking for my food.
Right.
That I grew myself. Because maybe that's the, sick, twisted plan. Because you got to think about this. In a weird, demented way. Think like a globalist for a minute. They want the sheep culled. And then you ask the question there, like, which kind of people would they want to... They only would want to bring a certain amount of people through. Well, who do you think they'd want to bring through? The people who were independent thinkers that took the volition not to buy into the brainwashing, not to buy into the media thing, not to buy into the narrative, that had a free mind, free will, free thinking, and got out of the cities to go grow their own food and get off the land, or get on the land and get off the system? Or do you think they want to carry through a bunch of people that are on the system, that got the vax, that are now a limited lifespan, that did everything, and they're kowtowing to every single whim and whisper of the governments? I mean, who would you want to bring through to the new world? Sick, twisted thought, I know, but think like a globalist for a minute.
No, I absolutely think you're right, and here's why. All of these people think they're royalty. I mean, literally. A lot of them, can have titles that they claim and all this stuff. Why wouldn't they want to go back to the feudalist system? So let's say something really bad happens here for several decades in a row. These factions are going to come back out, and they're going to claim ownership of lands all over the place. And the only people that are going to be living there are kind of the people that hid from them and their directions. And these will be all people that they'll want to torment again. That's kind of how they operate. They'll be claiming rights over it. If a lot of people don't know, in feudalist, Europe with the kings and queens, the lords, the lower lords would go around to the villages and just take what they wanted. They'd take women on their bride night. They would take all the food supplies. They would take the last of their money and taxes. And that's exactly what they kind of want to do. But they don't want to just come out to an earth that's unprepared. But I do think that they'll keep a lot of cognitive people that are kind of status type people that will continue to work for them, fixing the robots. And, everywhere I look, I see that we totally have the technology where we don't need human beings quite as much as we used to. We just kind of need them for maintainers at this point. People are even trying to put dead people in AI and load them into robots. You got robots at the Olympics performing better than people with perfect precision. It's cute and amusing to see a robot throw a basketball perfectly in a basket from different links. But think about this, that same robot can do that same thing with any kind of military grade weapon. And then, I was playing this for people a minute ago, and I'm playing it again. Over the Olympics, I think something really tremendous happened for the public. You might not have seen it, but they put up hundreds and hundreds of drones that were programmed to make three-dimensional objects and shapes. They did the Death Star. They did a giant Earth. They made it look like a little planet was floating in the air. This is some really cool technology, and I'm sure you've heard of Project Bluebeam. I don't know whether or not that's a real thing or not. However, this display in Tokyo, Japan for the Olympics shows you that they can make anything possible in the sky with a little bit of programming and some hardware. I mean, it's just we're at that point. And then, the people that tell us, this is just a kind of anecdotal story I thought you might find amusing. A man sends lizard saliva to 23andMe for DNA testing, and the company claims, he has that reptile has human history in Europe, and it kind of shows you what a sham some genetic testing is, and I think you can see the parallels to these major billionaire companies fraudulently displaying supposed DNA facts that are not facts at all, and they really don't even have that kind of technology. But they do have the technology of deception, and we're seeing that all over. And all over the world, scientists are trying to say that, we're not even us, that we're just a collection of inanimate objects with consciousness. A panpsychism, if I said that right. But they're trying to push that on people. Yeah, and it's all this nonsensical stuff that takes your mind so far away from you and your fingers putting a seed into the ground and growing a future.
Yeah, because I'm looking, you hit it on the head so precisely right there. Because when I saw those headlines of Google and Apple requiring all their employees to get vaccinated, all of them.
Yeah.
Imagine if you could wipe out that class of person who was a programmer, because you don't need them anymore, because like you say, AI can program everything anyway. Because I was looking at Solar Warden, or now what they call, I guess, Radiant Guardian is kind of the name they call it now, the U.S. space program. And I do believe in extraterrestrials, and also our own anti-gravity craft that have been perfected since the 1940s with von Braun and then Dr. Brown, and the electrogravitics programs that were moved forward. So knowing that and understanding that what they have in terms of tech that's literally 50, 100 years ahead of what's out in the public right now, like these Boston Dynamics, they just released that new dancing robot thing where they got 12, 15 of these robots and different things going around containers, and then they zoom up and they get a drone shot of all of them doing things. So I could see that's like a walking army. They made it look cute because it's going to a song. But whatever they have released out in the public, 50 years behind, even more, maybe 100 years behind, secret space program, got all the electrogravitics craft, anti-gravity this, free power devices everywhere. And imagine if you really just don't need those programmers anymore because everything can be done with AI. You're sitting in Google going, I'm a medium honcho in Google. I got it so good. Nobody ever can take my job. I'm a programmer. But what if you knew that the programmers are the ones who could stop the code from the AI that could reverse it or stop the AI? You'd want all them out of the way. Like the AI would be intelligent enough to go, all right, all these programmers can program something that could possibly stop or at least reroute enough of me where they could do something to me later. I need to get rid of all those people. So when I saw that headline come out, I was like, oh, they're going to try to cull all those people who understand how to code. And I was wondering why. I'm still trying to work through that. Why would you target a particular brain class of person with a specific set of code understanding? Why would you take them out of the mix of everything? If, like you said, it required coding to put all those drones up there to make sort of a 3D printed image in the sky, some coding, well, AI could do that.
Yeah.
The only thing that AI would be terrified of is another human that could code as well, because code against code is nothing more than mathematics battling in a different dimension, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you think about all the things we have societally that damage children, from mental to, you could add fluoridation, and I mean, the list goes on and on. But imagine if you knew that a certain percentage of the overall children were going to be born with a capability to learn and interact with code, because all of that code came out of mostly human minds until, like you said, they started testing the waters with allowing AI to write its own code. And as we know, several companies have admitted to some bizarre results from doing that. If you remember the Facebook computer that kind of invented its own language to talk to the other AIs, and then supposedly they unplugged it, and then there was another AI that they kind of let loose on the internet, and within months it became hateful and weirdly attacked people and stuff. Its ego came out of control. So we've already had some bizarre things from letting that happen. But I think you're right. If no one else could know how to do things, it would still be like magic. So, like I was talking about the feudalist stuff, if you're the only one with the coders and you're the only one with the little robots and you're the only one with all of this stuff because, you've had it hidden away in a cave and you've been building stuff in the meantime, you would just come out and it would be like any other time in our past where a more industrial civilization meets a more primitive civilization, and that's kind of what it would be like. And I think they're counting on that, actually. I think what they don't realize is that most of those people that have been smart enough to live off the land also have other talents. Like, if you haven't noticed, the most people that are really passionate about prepping and other things, most of them are really, really smart with one thing or another. Like, you can point out some examples. I mean, we know a geologist and a rocket scientist, et cetera, they're all on the same trips that we are, just to use the earth to grow stuff and be in tune with it and be self-sufficient. I mean, because it's so easy really to be self-sufficient if there wasn't other groups and factions trying to stop you from doing it. And I think that's kind of why they try to destroy children's minds, so that they have no competition. Because I think you're right. There's just so many children that are born that just jump right into the computer world, and we're amazed by it. Like, how do they do that? They do that with other stuff. Like, I saw a kid, ironically, he was juggling, but he was also reciting pi, and he was juggling Rubik's cubes, solving them while he was juggling them. And I just thought, that's amazing, but are they teaching that kid to farm also? You know what I mean?
What is the correct spacing between pea varieties on the sweet snap pea? I need that in your Rubik's Cube model, baby. I will say one thing about the tomatoes coming in this year in Tennessee. We're getting about 15 pounds of tomatoes every 3 days now.
Wow.
And for two people, that's awesome, because there's extra, and we're looking at all these recipes on how to cook sauces to store it up and do, a bit. So come toward the end of the season, we're going to be going down to the Amish farm and buying like 100 pounds of tomatoes and then canning those up. So there's always going to be something that's coming in season, and learning how to store the foods for a future date. Like squash is super easy. Pumpkins are super easy. I'm learning from the old timers here about this is a little secret from the old timers in Tennessee. This one of our neighbors is like 70 something, and she was telling me about because I was saying, our dog puppy got in and broke a couple stems off, and we have a nice handful of green tomatoes. And I was going to do fried green tomatoes because that's a real fun recipe down here. And I was thinking, I don't have any egg. I need to go get some egg, and then I'll do a fried green tomato thing. And she was like, you know what? If you put those in newspaper and you have like a wooden crate or a beer crate, whatever it is, milk crate, could be any kind of crate, wrap them in newspaper, lay them in a flat, line, and then put a piece of cardboard on top, and then put your next layer of green tomatoes. Keep them in a nice, cool place. And she's like, by Christmas they will slowly ripen, and you open those up, and you'll have a red tomato at Christmas. And I was like, no, you're kidding me.
Yep.
And she's like, yeah, really. We did that every year since we were like knee-high to a grasshopper. And that's a secret also, to have red, fresh, green veggies. Tomatoes, as a matter of fact, you can get green tomatoes way cheaper than you can get red ones, right? Anything that's unripe like that. So if you know that little trick of getting your tomato, wrapping it in newspaper, then keeping it in a cool place, it'll actually slowly ripen, fresh tomatoes, just like they come off the vine coming up Christmas time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's so many things to learn about, how to store the foods, and, mathematics is great because it does give you the precision on spacing between plants. But then what other skills do you have above and beyond that? Because we are going to need some real skills in the real world. I mean, that mathematics is awesome for building things, as you well know. To measure things correctly so they fit. Like, you got to have some basic, because I really learned from the Amish. They got all the basic skills, like all the guys, it's very segregated there between men and women in terms of tasks and intermixing of just like average day, you're still going around saying hi to girls or whatever. It's like, but that's not like that in their communities. It's like women are, like not allowed, are not supposed to be talking to other married men, etc., especially from outside the community. All right, but anybody there, all the guys, they all understand all basics for the repairing the tools, making the tools, mathematics, water flow, water pressures, pounds per square inch, especially when pulling things with horse wagons, and when they remove things for stretching, if they're going to try to stretch a metal piece using horses to pull around and get the springs to wind so they can create a spring for the bottom of a wagon, all kind of crazy stuff. Like, they wired it down, and that's a base knowledge that a lot of us don't have, is simple mathematics to make simple stuff work. Think the 1800s. Do you have enough math to make a simple device that would make something move in the 1800s? Because I was there, and they were making springs for a new horse carriage. They pounded that out by hand, and they had a horse wrap it around another center metal post, and they knew exactly when to tell that horse to stop, and then it came out in a perfect circle. And those four, if you wouldn't have told me and I hadn't seen that with my own eyes, I would have thought they were made in a factory. They wired down those basic skills. They got it wired down. So how close are we to that? I mean, Ransom, I know you're super good with math and measurements and all that stuff, but how's the average person, do you think?
I don't know about that, but I'll tell you this. I've worked in a couple places where I've discovered that the people there of a certain age, kind of younger than me, most of them didn't even know how to, read a measuring tape. They didn't know fractions. Fractions are pretty basic if you grew up in America. Most of that stuff, but I think a lot of it is hands-on, and even people that don't know math can figure out how to do things. Like if a kid can figure out how to build things and take it apart in Legos, then you can pretty much strip a car down and put it back together if you have all the right parts. I can do that. I'm not a mechanic. If I take it apart, though, I can put it back together if you remember how you took it apart. It seems simple to me. Evidently, some people do have problems with that, but that's the whole reason we would have trade. And, you were talking about the tomatoes thing. I guess it's because I live in a more dry climate, but last year we had hundreds of tomatoes. I ended up with a tomato forest, way more tomatoes than, I thought we were even going to grow. I was just playing around, but we ended up getting, buckets and buckets full of them. And they were still like really big and green in November when the first snow came, and I had to build a whole temporary greenhouse to try to save them. And then I realized that we could just do that, and we didn't even need the little newspaper. We just kept them in buckets, and I'd open up a new 5-gallon bucket of tomatoes, leave them on the table for a few days. They turn red. And that's one thing a lot of people don't realize is that the food that they get from the supermarket has already been in transit for months, some of it. When you're getting a melon, it's already about to expire. When you're getting eggs, the lifespan of the egg has already run its course, and things like that. Like if you have chickens, you can coat them with eggs and keep them for months at room temperature. And if you have melons, if you keep them in a cool place, even the underdeveloped melons will eventually ripen. Last year we had melons all the way into late January that were just sitting on the counter at room temperature ripening. And we had tomatoes all the way into the spring. And I made lots of salsa. And I called my garden the minimal effort garden because really with minimal effort and a couple of walkthroughs a day, which you probably need for health anyways, to get outside, breathe fresh air, get some sun, a couple times a day, even if you're not trying that hard, you can harvest more than enough food for yourself. And with a couple people contributing to the same idea, it's not really hard to feed human beings on the planet. It's the fact that we've been taught to go in a different direction, and then this whole Japanese. It's weird because when I was in school, I did a whole project on the just-in-time system, which was new at the time. It was a revolutionary new idea to get products places at the right time without spending billions in storage and shipping if you shipped it to the right place, which is a great idea. However, it has a big flaw, is that things tend to wait in places, and whenever this just-in-time system breaks down, nothing gets anywhere just in time. In fact, if you do get it at all, it's going to be close to expiration if it's any kind of food products.
Yeah, and I'm looking at so many what is considered, fast food chains that have their own vertical integration, that they own the farms where the produce comes from. Yet they're lacking in most of their basic products, from the beef to the lettuce to the tomatoes to the shells, the wrappers, the corn, whatever it is. And I find that baffling that companies that had set it up to be leaders with their own supply chains, so they didn't have to rely on what you're talking about. They didn't have to rely on somebody else. They had their own shipping companies, their own gardens, they own the land, they own everything, even the seed stock. They own seed companies so they could have the seeds to grow the plants and then have everything in between to have it delivered to the stores in mass, because they have thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of franchisee chains going out. Yet they're experiencing shortages too on almost everything. So for me, that's another huge red herring there, that companies that have their own supply chains outside of our just-in-time delivery, they're running their own independent supply chains, are running out of their own stuff from their own farms on their own supply chains. I'm truly baffled.
It's almost like somebody. It's almost like somebody told them all at the same time to slow down.
You think somebody's trying to slow it down? Who would want to do that? I mean, don't we just share a beautiful planet with everybody else?
Well, my point being that I think that the elite have known that this kind of change is coming and that there would be real food shortages in the future. So for whatever reason, kind of like what I was talking about before, the kind of negative way that they do things, it seems like, a couple years maybe before then, food started having problems. If you remember, all through the last year, there was already crops being plowed under and beef being destroyed and eggs being destroyed and milk being poured out and, on and on and on. And then now this year we're having supply chain problems and, even the fast food people are saying you're going to have to start dealing with less on the menu because we just can't keep up. And you're right. How could they fail if they own their own farm and have their own distribution? You would think that maybe, is there a problem even beyond that we should know about? And that's probably unlikely. I would think that the farming would be doing fine if they did it right. So it's almost like all in unison, kind of like the governments right now, all decided to do the same thing at the same time.
Yeah, that's right. Because even with the money, if you think of any of the, like Yum, which owns Starbucks, which is having coffee shortages, by the way, or will inbound coffee shortages for Starbucks. Okay, they own their own coffee farms, but see, they're going to blame it all on Brazil. But I know for a fact Starbucks is a worldwide, has coffee farms in every nation that produces coffee. So if you say, okay, Brazil lost XYZ amount of production, okay, Brazil the largest producer, okay. But then how does Starbucks claim that 100% of their production is not in Brazil? So they're spread out across many countries. And it just seems that that's the convenient excuse. Because with this kind of money, you're talking about Yum with McDonald's and KFC and Starbucks and who else is in there? Pizza Hut. Then you got Chipotle and you got all these other brands that are around with Taco Bell and everything in between. Indoor vertical agriculture, indoor ag, a lot of that stuff, hydroponic, aeroponic, they still, even with the investment, if you're putting out, 3 million head of lettuce a year, and you want to guarantee that you're getting the lettuce, I know some of those same companies did build indoor grow. So then why is there a lack of food then? If you have vertical indoor ag and you're still saying that there's a food problem, that is a very purposeful supply chain shutdown on purpose. Oh, we can't grow it. It's a bad weather. It's too hot. It's too cold. It's too rainy. It's too this. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, 3 million out of the 6 million head of lettuce come from our indoor grow facility every year. Like what? Come on, really? Something else way nefarious is going on beyond that.
No, it's just all pandemic recovery. So supposedly,
oh, the pingdemic, yeah, and that whole thing too, if I might add, Ransom, like that ping app that was going on over in the UK that's causing food shortages too, because it's saying everybody stay home. Everybody that's in, it was so magically directed toward everybody that's in food delivery, food catering services, food supply wholesale, food delivery truck drivers, supermarket workers, and those 800,000 people were pinged. They all stayed home. And everybody else was allowed to go out. Why was it so directed toward the foods and the food services that pinged everybody to stay home? Again, really strange how a predominant amount of those pings that were coming were directed toward people involved in food of some sort. It was like that entire segment, like they already knew who was working where and they falsely pinged them. John, who works at this supermarket, Mary, who's a truck driver over here, Betty, who is the warehouse manager, they all got pinged to stay home. Really unbelievably crazy, the amount of food people that it seems all so planned. Everything seems so planned now.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to get your opinion on, if you remember, the White House press secretary was bragging on the 4th of July, Independence Day, that barbecue was 16 cents cheaper. Or no, it was hot dog buns or something like that. Meanwhile, we're reading these article after article about everything is going up. And they're citing the reason that the higher costs are skyrocketing is because of, like you said, we can't get these ingredients. We're having trouble with packing and transport. We just can't get it places. And they're talking about everything, which are the normal things that people buy. They're going to have a weird targeted price hike if we watch and pay attention, that the less popular items are not going to skyrocket in price as fast as other things like coffee, bottled water, ice cream, pizza, etc. All of those junk things, they're all going up because that's what people are addicted to right away. But shortly after that, you'll see the more important things skyrocketing in price, like big bags of beans and all of that stuff, because there are a percentage of people out there that are still, a little savvy when they see that the prices are skyrocketing and you got inflation and deflation right around the corner, that they would go buy all of these supplies up. Like, we know that happened just a year ago when similar things were happening. And mark my words, and we talked about this, it's almost like we're psychic, where we talked about how everything would open up and then they would announce that, there was some kind of new brand of the same thing going around, and then that everybody would have to close up and They're going to see how much more, rings of fire will jump through, stupid human tricks will do, before people admit that what's going on is a permanent change.
Well, I'm going to say this year, I'm going to add another psychicness to you. Let me get out the crystal ball. Here we go. At the end of the year, there's going to be rationing. And the lockdowns are going to be part of the new entry into the supermarket. Now, whether the COVID pass or whatever is required or not, it'll be a different thing for each state, each country. But this new iteration on the lockdown coming in is going to be the beginning of your access to food. There's going to be shortages, rationing, and limits like you've never seen before. And it's all going to be overseen by how many people are in the store, very cleanly how many items you're allowed to purchase. And I don't know if they're going to limit you to only credit card purchases, so that way they can run your name through. And if there are rationing, that they can ping your name on a list. So if you try to use your credit card to purchase the same thing, banks will be working in unison with government on the rationing, with the supermarket chains, and that whole, intertwined tentacle octopus there of finance, business, agribusiness, distribution, etc. This is it. At the end of this year, when this next lockdown comes in, it's completely about the food from that point forward until part of the world starves off and whoever's left is left. Once it starts, that is the marker for you. Just like, when we come back from the break here, way back when I started my channel, it was even before I started Adapt 2030, I was working with a couple guys, and we were talking about plasma. So my nickname back when I was doing videos before Adapt 2030 was Plasma Dave. And Ed Dames, who was a remote viewer, had talked about before the solar kill shot comes in, people from the International Space Station will be evacuated. And he couldn't really say why. It was something hit the space station, or it was debris coming down that caused an evacuation from the space station. And it'll be world news. And then right today, I see cosmonauts scramble to tilt the righted space station after the Russian space nodule knocked it completely off, 45 degrees off of its axis there. Is this the event of the space station where if you start to see these astronauts evacuated out of there, is this the Ed Dames solar kill shot that was prophesied or foreseen some 10, 12 years ago? Which is an interesting concept to think, because what we're in right now is this same sunspot group that let off 2 planet-killing X-flares swings around over onto our side, and are these astronauts going to come down? If it is, it all matches the timeline. Oh, what interesting times we're in. That was Ed Dames, by the way, who trained a lot of people, and some of them I know, but we'll see.
I got a question for you. It seems obvious, though, that when the food rationing starts and people are having trouble getting their food, that there's going to be a black market for food and things that people are growing, trading. Like, well, you got cantaloupes, I got honeydews, you got peppers, I have some lettuce, etc., etc. How long do you think it'll be until the government gets annoyed with this and tries to start mandating that? Because we've seen it in the past on a bigger scale, like larger farmers doing cookouts where the FDA will come and dump all their food out, or SWAT teaming Amish people for selling cheese and milks and things like that. But eventually they're going to be, realizing that people are getting around their system somehow because of other people that have already been growing, or people that started to grow, and there'll become a small black market of food. And if you've been paying attention, they've slowly tried to get rid of that, and part of it's what you were saying about, only places taking credit cards for things. There's still the need for supplies until you can start manufacturing things on your own, which will really make you stick out. Me and my son are playing this video game, which is, it's not a very popular game, but it's kind of like a popular one. And in it, the premise is we're invaded by a communist country, and that our own government folds to it, and some kind of EMP is set off to where no one has electricity, and everybody's just, like, even in the game, they're growing things, they're scavenging for batteries, they're trying to set up solar stuff. And, it made me think about how ridiculous it is for some of these people that think that they're just going to throw up some solar panels and ride the apocalypse out. When I looked over there in Germany and saw those fields of solar equipments just destroyed by the hail. I mean, they were utterly destroyed and useless. And if it was an apocalyptic type scenario where they were off grid there and they were using their own electricity, there's nobody going to be delivering new parts for those panels and things like that. So there has to be a workaround. Like right now, we're trying to construct some solar stoves. I mean, hopefully we'll have sun forever, or at least some degree of it. And these are things you could just put out all over the place where you can cook outside, grow your food. You just don't need electricity. You can get along without it. People did it for millions of years, and it's weird that society now is so interdependent on it. From diabetics to entertainment junkies, whatnot.
Black plastic will be one of your best friends at that point. You are going to want your windows blacked out at night, because if electricity, you have that. Even let's say you're able to get the solar panels out in the daytime, disguise them enough, and then bring them in every evening. You got batteries charged, you got light in the house. You're going to want your windows blacked out so nobody can see that you have a glowing house, because that makes you a target. I've been here right with Ransom Godwin from 420 TV Freedomist Films for the last hour, and David Dubine right here, DAP 2030.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the planet. Not giving up. Revolution Radio. Radio. All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
And welcome back for the second hour of mini Ice Age conversations. David Dubine right here, along with Ransom Godwin, 420 TV Freedomist Films, over on YouTube. Check out the channel, full of great thoughts, ideas, and he's been suspended for having some of these same great thoughts and ideas banned off of any type of streaming, because we are talking into the naughty subjects. And it's such a terrible thing. We have great ideas to try to expand the mind of all of us working together to get more self-sufficient through these changes. But for some reason, Big Brother says, hey, you guys can't talk about that. Well, right here on freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio, we are able to. And thank you so much for all the hard work at the station and keeping us on air here. Everything that's involved with that, running cost, you got to do the programming, this sort of thing. So consider a donation to keep our speech, our ideas on air, along with everybody else's here from Studio A and also Studio B. Because to produce and keep the production going 24/7, 7 days a week on 2 different streaming channels, Studio A and B, that's a large task. And if you value free speech and ideas, and this will be one of the last places you'll get information. I bet in the future, it's going to turn into an emergency broadcast station where this is where the real information will flow through, even if all the other channels of what you consider regular garbage like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, if it gets all cut, freedomslips.com will still be on here. So we'll be able to throw the information. So again, consider a donation if you want to keep our thoughts and yours open to discussion. Now, before we went on the break, I was talking about the solar kill shot. And this is one thing that worries a lot of people suddenly, because the last 2 X-flares that would have been planet ending in terms of our electrical grid and way of life, 2 occurred in the same week, and that same sunspot group is swinging around to the Earth here. It'll be here in about another 8 days, 9 days. Should be swinging around the side of the disk where we'll be able to see it. But as you know, for some reason, our Earth has an effect on the sunspot regions or sunspot groups in the equatorial region of the sun, or even a little bit up to maybe 20, 30 degrees north off the sun equator, north or south. When the Earth gets right in that zone, that would have a massive CME come out and blast our electrical grid, seems to like dissipate or nullify or change the charge and really make those sunspots dissipate. And you've seen it again and again for the last 150 years when it swings into that sort of Earth. So even a small amount of magnetism here with an iron core has some direct connection back to those sunspots again. So the reason I'm saying this is, there's some new headlines coming out suddenly. Climate scientists warning the next 20, 30 years will be cold. Now see, it's not just Dr. Willie Soon on this. Now the New American's on top of it. Malaysian astrophysicists are in on it. They're all talking about a weakened state of the sun. Now what is it? And then Harvard's jumping onto it. That's the Stellar Physics Division of Harvard. The Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics is also jumping on this. Hey, it's going to get colder for the next 20, 30 years. So when Ransom and I were talking in the beginning of the program, it seems that there's this tidal wave, a bevy of information coming out to now switch narratives again. Because Ben Davidson talked about this over on Suspicious Observers. He's like, I've been following these reports on electromagnetism and current sheath from the sun and intergalactic current sheath and different types of ways stars interact electromagnetically with other stars, galaxies, solar systems, etc. And he's like, there's more information that come out in these last 2 months than in the last 10 years. Backing up, electromagnetism was what drives everything. And the same thing here with the climate debate. There's more stuff coming out in these last 2 weeks about sun's going down, we're going to get cold, weather patterns are changing. Maybe it's not 100% CO2. There's a lot of that big thing, that yellow thing over there is pushing a lot of our changes. And it's the same thing wherever you look in the microcosm. And you talked about it, Ransom, in the beginning on the news, like the tidal wave of news smashed into 1 week with all these changes back of the narrative, back to the same previous thing before. So I don't know what it is, but it seems whatever you're looking at, especially across the sciences at the moment, what was the fringe is now becoming, safe enough to speak about for so many high-level institutions, university professors, individuals, researchers, etc. So what is it all? It's all dovetailing into what? It will be more my question.
I don't know. If you thought maybe a kill shot was coming from the sun, or maybe it was likely to come, you'd think you would like practice lockdowns worldwide or something. Practice getting people in line for when the neighborhoods are going to turmoil. Just long enough for you to skid off somewhere. No, I'm just kidding. But, I was looking at that. Now I'm showing it, this thing in space. So you were saying that this was like a prediction about the space station, having issues.
Yeah, so let me tell the story again before we go on break. I know a few remote viewers, and way back when I was starting my YouTube channel called Adapt 2030, I had done some videos because Comet Ison was swinging around. This is many moons ago. This is back like 2015, 2014. Comet Ison was coming through. And there was an enormous amount of electrical action on Mars between Comet Ison and Mars. So then I picked up on it, and I was working with a couple other guys, and they liked the way I narrated everything. Back then I was much slower, and there were much more gaps, longer gaps between my speech. They wanted it more like a nature show where the penguin just escaped the great white shark. So anyway, I was up like that. So it was all about plasma and about space debris, a solar kill shot, and Ed Dames was, and this was the whole thing. Like Ed Dames had made this prediction that the space shuttle would be forced down, or the astronauts on the space shuttle would be forced down from the space shuttle, making international news headlines everywhere. And after that point, there would be a solar kill shot that would hit the Earth and fry an enormous amount of anything sun facing at that point. So when we were doing the Comet ISON series of videos, the way it was coming around, it could have possibly at perihelion, as it was moving past above the Earth, coming out of its trajectory, had that electrical connection, which would have forced the astronauts down because there would have been tailing space debris with it and electrical activity. So we were saying, all right, maybe this is what Ed Dames is talking about, because maybe we're coming into this. But I'll never forget that. It didn't manifest as such. Comet ISON broke apart coming across past the sun. You could actually see it with the naked eye in the middle of the day. Well, actually not a naked eye, but a telescope or a telephoto lens. And that Ed Dames viewing session that they had always stuck with me because the solar kill shot, and I keep hearing this again and again, and every time I hear it, I always think of that Ed Dames prediction. But the main number one thing in advance of that was space station, all astronauts evacuated. Something hits it. And you know what? That Russian thing hit it, and it hit the thrusters, and it turned it 45 degrees off its angle. Now, the story goes today, they've apparently are in the process of rewriting it back to 0 degrees off of its tilt angle. But what if they can't? What if something then suddenly they decrease their orbit because, and suddenly their new orbit around the planet, they're suddenly 2 miles lower than they were before, and then the next day it's 4 miles lower, and they're like, oh, this thing's going out of the atmosphere, we need to get everybody out of here. That is the main precursor. Evacuation from the space station, everybody out, and then we get that solar kill shot. So I'm just leaving it there, because that's happening today. Possibly if they evacuate that thing, get on the highest mountaintop you can and watch this CME come pouring in on our planet. You'll see red auroras down in Cuba.
You know, some of those remote viewing sessions are close and yet sometimes aren't exactly right. So even if it didn't turn out to be that, because what I was just reading is they were saying they got it back under control. But what if we did? We're coming into the time where the solar kill shot's more likely than it's been, I don't know, 100,000 years or so. We're lining up for it. Matter of fact, several kind of, got launched out. We keep getting those same things. But what happens, like you said before, where you've brought up, where the position of the planets are pulling on the sun and the earth and everything differently, and how much does that have to do with, where the sun kind of burps out all of that stuff in a CME?
Well, the 100,000 years might be a little long, because if you're looking at the recurring magnetic excursions, reversals, and then micronova from the sun, they occur on the 12,000 year pattern. And you might want to talk about magnetic reversals, and they do find in every 12,000 year we get this cataclysm cycle, and we're back at the doorstep again. And being focused more on movements of the stars and how the ancients perceived where we were in the heavens, and how the energetic signature from whatever region we were transiting. Now, we would call that astrology, for example. Going around the precession of the equinoxes, we transit through 12 different star signs, but each one of those has a different energetic signature with it. Like right now, we're going into the age of Aquarius. It's much faster. It's like a lightning bolt, if you will, from what we just exited out of, which was a more heavier, kind of denser energy. And forget the sign. Don't worry about the fish or the scales or anything. You're simply talking about the energy frequency change as the Earth transits through above and below the ecliptic, and where it sits in the heavens, and what kind of denseness of space and energies of either heat or cool are around that plasma medium as we're moving through it. It's been mapped out for like a couple 100 million years. And I always wonder, going back 200 million years with the Mayans, mapping this energy density out of how The spiral galactic arm, if it does one whole rotation around, is 220 million years, but they had several cycles of that mapped out. The Mayans furthest back calendars go back some 1 billion plus years. 5 cycles of this 220 million years past goes back, and that's how far the Mayans had transited or chased this cycle back. So obviously they know when we come into heavier or lighter regions of space, heavier, denser plasma regions, more space strewn debris regions of space. Now it's been all mapped out. So the astrology, what we understand right now, is good for this 25,000 year cycle. We just moved into the age of Aquarius, faster energies. So the top-down approach of elite governments are going to have to change structure to control citizens because we're going to move faster. So their old approach of like burning people at the stake and, you know, church top-down dogma, etc., not going to work moving forward. We're going to vibrate faster, so we'll see through their corruption so easily. But the reason I'm saying that is, if you flip 180 degrees and go back on the procession here, what's behind us? Leo, the lion, the Sphinx. So when you come back 180 degrees across the equinox there, and you go back 6 star signs back across the zodiac, we just hit that what they call the crossing of the galactic cross. So there's some massive, significant events planned anyway, just the way that the ancients looked at the heavens, the way we're moving into a different region of space, which is way more active and way more energetic plasma-wise with higher temperatures anyway. And all these changes are coming. So the Earth would behave differently as well. But bring it down just into our simple solar system here. Forget the spiral arm of the galaxy, or, you know, 2 solar systems over and in Cygnus A, or, you know, Betelgeuse or whatever. Forget that. Just stay right here in our local neighborhood. The sun's stepping down. There's massive changes inbound. They're here already, and they're just intensifying by the day. So with all that, you know, really you can only do the best you can do for what you're prepared for already. And like living every day, because understand, you know, Ransom, you said it best a couple, you know, like last episode, this is the only time we've ever had a chance to really like retire on a golf course in human history. Like going back over the last 12,000 years, these last 100 years are the most stable pretty much we've had since the last 4,000 years. The medieval climate optimum about 4,000 years ago, there's been a couple warm peaks. Beyond that, this has been the most stable climate we've had in thousands of years. To retire on a golf course is a once in a 12,000 year possibility. Now, maybe 4,000 years ago, 8,000 years ago, it might have been a little different. Maybe they had retirement back then. But the way we're moving now, this ease of life that we've enjoyed so much is such an anomalous blip on the whole history of humankind. It is so anomalous, so rare, so outside of the normality that it is a cosmic blip, literally. So most of human existence has been through these cycles, trying to reset, trying to get restarted, trying to survive through it, trying to do whatever you can with community, with tribe, to move through. And we can just do the best we can do right now because we are in the shift as we speak. We're in it. We're in the movement right now. Like you're going from 3rd gear to 4th gear, we are in that movement of where that clutch is actually in motion to move it into the next gear. And all you can really do is the best you can. And what you've prepared for and the skills you have and the community around you, that's it. So just live your days as if it's another day, because that's it. You can't get stuck into fear. You got to just live your days as you're living them. Understand the changes are here. Massive changes, huge, everywhere on the planet. It's going to get way crazier, too. I mean, we see nothing yet. I mean, nothing. Really, nothing yet. So minuscule, the change that we're seeing. These next 3 years are going to rock your existence, literally. Could be a space debris rock, could be a comet, I don't know. But when the blue star comes around next year, summer or winter solstice, you're going to have this blue comet come through that's going to take up like the size of a full moon in the middle of the day. It's going to be blue. Now, this is stuff out of Hopi prophecy, man. People are going to lose their minds. But moving from this point today, just realize whatever you're doing is the best you can live. Like, live every day the best you can and follow your passion, doing the best you can for the things you love the most, because nothing else matters right now. The only thing that matters is you living your day to your utmost and fullest to do the most you can while the sun still shines. And that's the way it's been through human history. And it was going straight back there again. And the cycles of repeating cataclysm of 12,000 years, and the crossing of that was Randall Carlson's work, was the galactic cross. And Ransom, you're good with finding those images super fast. If you would find the galactic cross from Randall Carlson, we are at that juncture point where we're moving into a cataclysm cycle anyway, based on that half cycle of the full precession of the equinoxes. Directly back was Leo, and that's the Sphinx. That was such a gigantic change marked in history. And here we are again, moving into Aquarius at that same exact juncture point. Crazy on the timing. Everything's focused on the sun. Everybody knows what's happening, but nobody knows what's happening. I wonder intuitively when most people will start to get it. Will it be that dancing white halo in the sky that was seen off the airplane that shifted in and came? You saw those two horns come off it. You've seen that same stuff in canyon walls. It's live. It's in play in the skies now. Forget the sprites. That's a locked in 1 second event. That thing we witnessed today, moving around, dancing in the skies, was a petroglyph that stayed there for how many minutes in the sky, changing. That was the signal. There shall be signs in the skies, and we just saw one today. That if you had known petroglyphs and known electromagnetic energies, this was a long-lived electromagnetic event with a resonant charge visible in a light frequency that our human retinas could pick it up. That's where the glow mode is going. Light enough, charged enough for us to see dancing entities in the sky. That's what the cave paintings are. That's what the petroglyphs on the canyon walls are. It's back again. It's back.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I found what you're talking about, but it's basically the symbol I've been tripping on, going back to Cro-Magnon, putting this around, and I can't wait to get into that because it's like such a big thing. This symbol right here represents so many things. It's like one of the most important sacred geometry things because there's so much information hidden in it. And then, I think I got the right one. It's kind of like the, all the directions there. It says the Randall Carlson podcast. I mean, I can't find a thing for it, but I keep seeing.
Yeah, right. That would be it. It's kind of a goldish color with black.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so I'm looking at the right image. And was I, I'm kind of ignorant on some of the zodiacal stuff. So you were saying something about we're at the cross. Like a cross from Leo. So are you saying it's kind of like a galactic equinox, kind of?
That's exactly what it is. It's a halfway point around the full 25,750 year. We're at the halfway point right now. That's a very significant change in the age of Aquarius, because the last time, if you look across, it was the age of Leo.
So that's kind of why I was getting at that, is because with just regular lunar and solar equinoxes and solstices, that they're very important with the elite, and they're also very important with almost every culture going back to the beginning of time. So you would know that the people with the information of the long count and the precession of the equinox and all of this stuff, they would be waiting. Just like every other thing with gematria and numbers and dates and specific times, equinoxes, they always have something planned big for these things. So if this was like a big equinox to them, you can imagine what kind of shenanigans would be planned if they do other weird things on other certain sacred geometric dates and times in our galaxy and solar system, if that made any sense.
Yeah, now imagine this will be the biggest equinox in 12,000 years. Now imagine Saturn being included in the mix when Saturn's rings start to glow to the point when you see it on the Earth, they look like they connect with Jupiter, that kind of size. Because you got to think about how many ancient myths talked about having a second sun in our solar system, and what we're not talking about. What's that? The red star, Kachina, the wormwood, and that whole Planet X thing. No, something very different. This was talking about Jupiter is an unignited sun, and the only reason it's unignited now if you look at the regular textbooks, it wasn't enough pressure for the hydrogen to ignite into this whatever glowing gas ball that they, try to portray the sun as, a compressed bunch of gas that somehow ignited. What if it's electromagnetism that causes the glow in the outer current sheath to glow and turn the sun back on again? Because the only difference between a coal star or a brown dwarf is it's not ignited enough for us to really see it with the visible spectrum. It still has heat output. It just doesn't have the light output. And what is required to turn that on to get that light signature to come out at a higher amplitude? Electricity. So if there's a new current flowing through these four gas giants as our sun steps down, the current's going to be moved to a different place. Now, nobody really knows. Does it take an extra 3% increase in current inflow into Jupiter to ignite it to a glow mode? Does it take a 5% increase of current inflow into Saturn to turn it into a glow mode? Because all the ancient cultures talked about those two planets glowing to the point of being extra suns in our solar system. And we're not talking Planet X. Forget that's something completely different with Sitchin and the whole Anunnaki. That's completely different from what I'm talking about. We are talking about the two planets, Saturn and Jupiter, having a different frequency and a different electrical input to turn them on. Literally turn them on like a light switch. And perhaps that's where we're coming into. And when the elite see Saturn behave differently, their god planet that they worship, and we're coming into the biggest equinox in 12,000 years, perhaps those two the layer cake of nastiness for this global demonic cult. Perhaps. Maybe I'm just talking.
Maybe not. As soon as you started talking about that, I started thinking about some things in science and, weird occult stuff that may behave similar to what you're talking about. So I sent you a picture of the Hope Diamond. And if you know kind of the history behind the Hope Diamond. At one time it was owned by somebody, and then women took it over, and then supposedly every man that tried to take it and wear it and wear power, they ended up dying horribly, or someone betrayed them or whatever. But if you look into the Hope Diamond, you see the facets of sacred geometry in it. And the reason I bring this stone up is this is one of the stones that people believe, like the monarchy, that a woman would have to use to rule, and it has a lot of power, kind of like the spear of destiny. But you see that iron cross in the middle of it, kind of the way.
Yeah, that's a galactic cross right there.
Yeah, exactly. And another reason I pointed this out is that whenever you shine ultraviolet light into this diamond, it will glow in the dark red. So just like this diamond, there's other processes that could cause electrons and the transfer of magnetism and stuff to make things glow a different color or really bright. And I was just kind of bringing this up as an example. There's supposed to be, some kind of curse with this, but also it's got this Masonic, cross in the middle of it, which is also the galactic cross, which is part of this symbol that goes back to prehistory that we'll talk more about later. But just like that, this thing glows in the dark, red, bright red like blood, when it's exposed to a certain frequency of light. So if you think about the sun behaving differently and maybe like cooling off on the visible light spectrums, but it's still pumping off, I'm sure, a lot of UV radiation, you may see things in a whole new light from the planet Earth than was ever seen before, or at least hasn't been seen since the last time we were in the cycle. Is kind of my point there.
Well, yeah, you would expect a color shift change in a lot of spectrums that we're going to look at. I mean, the way we view just looking out through our atmosphere, that color is going to change. Like the sky should turn a tinge more green. And then the hydrogen isotopes that are banging off the surface of the sun, I'm not talking about the classical internal combustion of fusion and etc. particles trying to bang their way up from the surface or from the core of the sun outward. And because it makes no sense to me, look at a sunspot, it's darker in the middle of a sunspot. If the sun was truly combusting from the inside, the center of a sunspot would be brighter than the outside. You know, how does it get darker when you look on the in? So the magnetic rifting actually allows you to see through part of the photosphere, and you start to see through the granules on the sun. Why is it darker underneath there? Well, that doesn't make sense to me. It should be brighter. It was truly combusting from the inside. So anyway, you're going to start to see a lot of color resonance changes. And John Casey clued me onto this one here. He put on the cover of his book, if you go to the very first, Cold Sun, the first cover of his Cold Sun book was a blue-colored sun. He was expecting a color change as well. So knowing what he put on his book, and he was the leader, he sacrificed everything to give us this information. Like, he is, in my opinion, one of the greatest minds on the planet that gave us all this information about the grand solar minimum to the regular person like myself and others, so we could run with it and do our own research and really delve into it. He was the one that really allowed others to be the carriers of the torch of his message, because he was vilified for bringing this information out. I mean, destroyed. 30 years, stellar career. Remember the space shuttle explosion?
Yeah.
He was the lead investigator on that for NASA. That's the level he was at. He was the lead investigator for the space shuttle explosion. And after he came out with this saying, hey, the sun's going to get cold, we're going to go through a tremendous amount of crop losses here, Earth's crust is going to rift, shift, shake, and our infrastructure won't hold together, they crucified him. But at least he got the message out before he was sidelined. And with so much pressure and everything, he had a stroke, and I'm so glad he's gotten better, but he's completely walked away from all of this. He had to. And that's all I'll say about that. But there's been, his first cover on his book Cold Sun was a clue for anybody looking, literally looking. The color of everything's going to change. And you're right. I don't know what color Jupiter would become. What if it becomes a red dot in the sky, but not a dot, but bigger because the coma or some sort of, like if you look at Jupiter right now, it appears sort of a blue tinge because the aurora up there are going like a 10x of normal, and they're much larger. Like some of these solar flares, you got to look at, okay, the backside flare that went off, those 2x flares that went off the backside of the sun, Jupiter's right next to us pretty much. But if Jupiter went on the backside of that, those 10x aurora that are glowing on Jupiter now would have turned into 1,000x aurora. And we literally would have seen Jupiter turn to this giant blue ball in the sky. And how do you explain that? You know, that was like a 100x kill shot for the planet. Like if it would have hit us, it would have taken everything down on the planet electrically. So what would it have done to Jupiter? Obviously, it would have made its auroras glow so intently that you'd be like, wow, what's that blue thing that just appeared in our sky? So many signs are around us. So, you know, these biblical things, talking about there shall be signs in the skies. Oh, there shall be. And there already are. And there was another one today that is so in your face. Now, Ransom, I don't know, did you see that video of the glowing white object that changed shape? Did you watch the video?
No, I didn't get a chance to see it. I was watching the video of the Rocket Man flying through there at 5,000 feet.
Yeah, because I wanted to get your opinion on what you thought that you'd seen in canyon walls previously of what this thing moved and morphed into over the minute that somebody captured out of the airplane window.
What's the name of the video?
And it was, and it is,
We'll just put it up here on screen.
Yeah, it should be easy enough to find. I'm trying to run 3 devices right now, and I got like 180 windows open in my one browser on my. Those are things that I want to do for stories, by the way. That's how much I'm working for everybody here. Because I have all these things that I try to piece and put together. You know, I have a hodgepodge of things that, and I'll find it's crazy because like I'll leave a browser, you know, get all these stories, like 1,000 stories, and or 100 and something. 160 open in my tabs on my browser on my phone. And then I got all these other browsers and tabs open on different things. But I will remember a thing from like a year ago, like, oh, I could put that one with this one. I have that ability for some reason. I can do that pretty easily.
It's funny. I put in white electric scene shape-shifting and I get like 20 articles about reptilians.
Yeah, put the one out of the airplane window. I think it was on, where was it on? It was, damn, I think it was even on Zero Hedge, this one here. You're gonna test me on this one. Let me see if I can find it for you. Definitely would have been on Strange Sounds or something.
Let's see here.
And I was just like, yeah, I can relate all these things together, but I need to have all my windows open when I'm looking at particular topics of things. But it was a white, come on now.
Let's see here. I was trying to guess.
BeforeIt'sNews.com.
Before It's News. I'm expecting.
And here, you know, while I was pulling that up here, the Canadian border officers vote to strike, warn of supply chain disruption, and that's coming straight across the Canadian border there as well, by the way. So wherever you're looking at, you know, it doesn't matter, and I wasn't even looking for this such disruption in supply chain, but wherever you look, there is something now that says fully in your face, hey, control mechanisms coming down. You got everybody across the board demanding lockdowns, demanding mandatory this, that, or the other. But at the same time, everywhere you look, you can't even glimpse out of the side of your eye and your periphery vision without seeing another supply chain breakdown video somewhere.
Let's see here. Is this? This might be it. It looks like a man in a cloaked suit. And it does kind of look like a petroglyphus. This is the same one. Let me see. I'm going to send it to you. I might have just found another one.
Oh, jeez, my knees. Hold on, I got. Let me see if I can
shiny
find it here.
shape-shifting object from plain window.
Yeah, that's from plain window. That's the one. That is the one.
Let's see here. We'll just play the video.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one. UFO spotted. Man shares video of shiny shape-shifting object shot from a plane window. I am saying, unequivocally, without a doubt, this is an electromagnetic effect that was witnessed in real time of one of the magnetic field lines coming down that was highly charged, that allowed this to glow in invisible mode where your eyes picked it up. It was highly enough charged to make and shift shape, like you would see Squatter Man move, or you would see something jump off a canyon wall, Chaco Canyon, whatever, and change. And the thing that got me on this was, if you're looking at the head, toward the head, you're going to watch those two things that look like horns start to spin on each other, and then it pops out into two visible horns with sort of a head in the middle. That's exactly what plasma does in all the laboratories that you've ever seen anything ever done with Squatter Man or Sapphire Project or anything they ever do, where they charge. The higher the current goes, the faster those appendages spin. Yeah, and whatever happened here, we are seeing a very slight glimpse of a plasma charge increase in real time.
Yeah,
and I am so that Ransom, you see what you see. You see that there?
Yeah,
that is a plasma, that's live plasma in real time, glowing to the point where we're going to start to see this across the planet. And I don't know how they're going to explain this away when you're seeing this. Not at this, it looks pretty small from what the video, But what happens when that takes up a quarter of the sky over a country? Like, you're going to see these things in real time. Squatter Man was seen across every single country, culture. It's in every cave across the whole entire planet. So we're going to see the exact same thing. This is the beginning of it here. It's just started again.
Yeah.
The electrification of our skies to bring out cosmic beings or mythical creatures has just begun again. So my question was, Ransom, after watching the video, have you seen this on a canyon wall? Because you are an expert at seeing petroglyphs and understanding petroglyphs through the desert Southwest. You've seen thousands, tens of thousands of them. So what are you seeing in relation to how the shapes moved as the electrification increased as this thing passed over a magnetic field line?
Well, you know, I just watched it 2 or 3 times, and I showed it on, you know, for everyone else. And I froze it at this one position where it looks like you're looking at an extraterrestrial light being with a neck and a head and everything. But if you play it for a few more frames, like you said, and you see these little spikes come out of what looked like a head, then what I'm looking at looks just like when you look at a sprite and you see those little, you know, tendrils or tentacles coming down from the center, from the cross point of where the charge is, you know, shooting down towards the Earth. It looks almost like one of those. But yeah, it does morph into several shapes of like these guys that have the big shields or the guys with the big heads and horns. And even, you know, for, you know, Judeo-Christian type people, right here, it looks like an angel with wings. I mean, like I froze it at a different place. So I could see how people a long time ago would interpret this in all kinds of different things. You know, we have more of a technological, you know, grasp of reality and a tint on the way we think of things. But if you think about somebody that didn't have any concept of giant electric universe, or they didn't have a concept of imaginary, you know, or not imaginary, but invisible magnetic fields and stuff, all of that stuff seems like magic in the supernatural. And this does exactly look like some stuff that I've seen on the walls. Especially when it morphs right in the middle and it looks like a guy with head with horns on it just for a couple seconds. But then when you actually look at it, it does look like an electrical phenomenon happening.
Yeah, so to understand this phenomenon, this is on an electric field line, or they call it field-aligned currents. The currents coming from the Earth's crust back out to the ionosphere and then back connecting to the sun. So these field lines are all over our planet, and it's not just they come in on the northern hemisphere and you get the northern lights, or they come in on the southern hemisphere and you get the southern lights. It's not like that. These field current lines come in everywhere across the planet. There's even some that come off the equatorial areas. So it's not like there's only north and only south, and the connections from the sun only go to the north and only to the south. No, they're all over. They're all over the planet. But this particular anomaly was on one of those field lines. And what had happened is it became electrified enough where this particular phenomenon glowed in a blue sky and it turned white. Now, normally, you're right, these would be a sprite above an electrical storm where the electrical storm itself had enough charge current to turn that phenomenon on red in a night sky. Talk about color changes. Now, who wasn't to say that if this was dark at night, this wouldn't be a different color? Well, it's in the middle of the day in a bright blue sky, so it appears white. But who was not to say that in a completely dark sky above a thunderstorm, this would not turn red? You know, we're talking about a different, what's the background color going to be?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of explanations that can be easily explained if you talk about electrical phenomenon on multi-thousand-year cycles and this whole ground-to-sky lightning thing. There's so many ground-to-sky lightning events happening right now that they actually are putting in the news as upward-reaching lightning is kind of a base term that they're using. They're trying to explain why there's so much lightning going from the ground up to the sky now, because it's happening so frequently that people are seeing these strange things where it appears that the lightning is emanating from the ground and going up to the clouds. Well, it is. It's trying to discharge the extra resonant electrical charge on our Earth. See, easiest way to explain it. If the sun is charged at, let's say, a 10, and for the last 400 years, the Earth has been equalizing the charge, so the Earth is charged at a 10 to match the sun and the Earth matching with the equal charge. So what if the sun steps down to an 8? Well, the Earth's at a 10 still. That's going to try to flick off that extra electrical charge somehow. And how's it going to do that? It's going to start sending that electrical current through earthquakes, and I am going to go out on a limb and say ley line glow and ley line electrification. Perhaps that's what and here's another thing I have been doing, some of my research is, all these chemical plants and all of these different factory explosions and just an enormous amount of things that are blowing up at the moment across the planet. So what I'm trying to do is get really, really incredibly good ley line maps and overlay them on the cities there where these explosions are occurring all the time. And seeing if there is some sort of mapping mechanism that matches this. Because if the ley lines are going to glow, because on Mars, 2 weeks ago, that's 3 weeks now, you saw the crustal component start to glow and create the aurora off of Mars on what was in the crust, with the minerals and the metals in the crust of Mars started to glow. And they connected out to the outer atmosphere that then connected to the sun. But that was in the crust of Mars. So the minerals can glow. Well, perhaps that's how they saw these ley lines everywhere. And I am saying if these ley lines started to get more highly charged again, and factories were on these ley lines, and cities are on these ley lines that are getting more highly charged, perhaps that's a reason for all these unexplained oil field fires, chemical explosions, etc. Because if you're going to throw a bunch of extra electrical current through an area, chemicals are very sensitive to electrical disturbance. If you look at how atoms and the perturbation of atoms and molecules mixing, if you're going to throw in an extra current into that, something that's stable at a certain temperature at a higher current inflow is not going to be stable in any way, shape, or form at that same temperature. So, looking at the ancient of where the ley lines are on top of all these chemical factory explosions and oil field fires, and do the math, find the maps and put them, and I just don't have the time to do all this kind of research, but if somebody else out there listening can figure this out, if you know more about ley lines than I do, and you have these really good maps of where the ley lines are, overlap them, because the ley lines are starting to glow, field line currents are starting to glow, our magnetic field lines are showing where the current inflow is coming into, and it's getting kind of cyclically crazy. We're going to see what our ancients had seen. They will no longer seem like crazy scrollings and scratchings on the canyon walls. They'll make sense.
So,
and I know I babbled on, and I'm done.
No, I sent you a photo, and I wanted your opinion.
I see that. I see the sprites. They look exactly like. Look at how they made the bottom layer or that top layer of the cloud glow. I mean, look at that. They look like two humans standing dancing in the sky.
Exactly. Well, if you look at it closer, I know each spot is actually one of those phenomenon, but the way this looks, it looks like a male, a female, and a baby. There's like a little one in between them. But yeah, if somebody was looking at this, and this was labeled ball lightning, but it's obviously like sprite activity or whatever. But there are several things from what is interpreted as Thunderbirds, what's interpreted as people, and I can send you some petroglyphs that look almost just like that, and all kinds of interpretations of what they are, and they may be, but when you look at that looks like two humanoid figures, or possibly even three, like two with the baby. If you look at the female one on the left side, it even appears to have female, bosom, and you could see right there a Madonna in the sky. So you could just think about all of the religious aspects of what different people believed over time. And when you're out in a field and you look up and you see these giant humanoid figures floating in the sky, I mean, that might be something so remarkable that you would want to go write it down or draw it to try to pass on what you saw, just like we do now with video and photography and different things. And I also wondered maybe even if some UFO sightings, I'm not even showing it here for everybody, but there we go. Maybe even some of these UFO sightings I was theorizing are actually like a big group of charged particles that are zipping down one of the magnetic field lines across the sky. And from a person's perspective on the ground, the angle may seem weird where it might. I'm not doubting UFOs. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying some of the phenomenon we might be seeing is kind of like a trick of angles where you see a big old electronic charged ball lightning just flying across a magnetic field line, kind of like if you put up grains of iron on a piece of paper and you flip the magnet around, you see it all rearrange and adjust real fast, and you actually see those little particles flying across the paper to get in their new position. And when I'm looking at this, when you look at it in more detail and you let your imagination go, one of the figures even appears to have a dog head that looks a little bit like Anubis. So if your whole religion was based on specific figures, I'm sure the anthropomorphic features of some of these electrical displays would make you think of whatever deities you believed in at the time. Maybe you thought it was Thor and his woman, and because there's lightning coming out of it. And I've been looking at a lot of video of ball lightning. Evidently, ball lightning is on the rise, and I wonder if this isn't something that we're going to be seeing, and maybe that's some of just the random spots and circles that are on the petroglyphs too, along with some of these figures, are actually things like ball lightning that people might have seen a lot more of as our magnetic field collapsed and things became energized from the sun and other forces in the galaxy. If that was a mouthful for you.
No, because how would you get the public to accept new things they're about to see? See, that's the thing. The cycles are here. Obviously, elites understand this. So now they need to get it through the media for the narrative to say, all right, hey, everybody out there, you're going to start to see all these new glowing things. They might be different colors depending on if it's a clear sky, if it's a night sky, if it is, I don't know, gonna rain, whatever, clear. But how do you get people to accept that they're seeing something new without freaking out to the point of non-functionality in a society? So there's one thing for people to see these changes and get to it, understand it, and say, all right, this is a huge change, things are here. But there's a fine line between people completely breaking down into the point of, see some of these sci-fi movies where people go insane when they're witnessing these things that are happening. So there's 8 or 9 different, right at the point of death, if you're going to be executed, there's like 8 or 9 different reactions. Some people are going to laugh hysterically. Some people are going to, not move a muscle. And there's all these different range of emotions. People are going to scream, some people are going to fight, some people cry, and others are, So how do you get to the point where people are still functional during these massive changes without spooking them to the point of non-action, where they become frozen from fear? Because the elites still need people to function for a while. But if they're frozen from fear, seeing these things in the skies, seeing these changes electrically around them, how do you balance that? So you're right, look for more messaging about strange things in the skies. I got one for you right here. This is off a plasma column experiment in a plasma chamber. It looks exactly like what you're seeing there.
Yeah. Let me put it up on this.
No, I mean, I got another one for you here. It's in black and white, though, because these are older experimental photographs coming out of, and you're going to like this one. Let me send it to you. So how do you think people would react, and how do you think they can balance them is more the question, because, your average everyday person walking through and seeing glowing things in the sky manifesting daily in different ways, shapes, and forms, how are they going to deal with that? Because some people are I'm going to be super happy to see it. I'll probably climb on top of the mountain that I have, that I own to the back of, and just watch these things every day appear in the sky and glance around and bounce around, and I'll be super happy, and I'll photograph and be like, whoa, look at the changes, because I understand the mechanism behind the change. But other people, when they see these same phenomenon in the sky, are absolutely going to lose their cognitive mind, that they can't believe what they're seeing, that it's not possible what they see, that the government would have warned us that this thing was here, that it's a demon, that it's an angel, that it's a something. They're looking for the end of the world. They're looking for a savior. They're looking for, this is going to verify every single possible realm of possibility for people, that as soon as they see something, they'll think the next thing's here. But how do you keep a society moving forward when all these changes are being seen? Like, you can't, okay, say you believe in the end coming. Okay, 10 or 20% of the people are going to drop out of the game immediately when they see these things happen in the sky. Like, I don't even go to work anymore. I don't even care anymore. Not going to do this, not going to pay tax, not going to do that. Nobody cares. So you're going to lose like 20% of the population immediately. That's just going to drop out and be like, man, it's over anyway. Done. But how do you get those same people to go, oh, when you see this thing in the sky, it's actually this, this, and this. It's not really the coming. It's a different thing.
Could we even handle 20%? Because what weirdly, you described two things there. A minute ago, you were talking about people laughing and crying. I immediately thought of the Oppenheimer speech about when they set off the atomic bomb, and that's exactly what he said. Some people laughed, some people cried, some people were in disbelief, and then he goes into the whole thing about being, the destroyer of worlds. But then you're also talking about these electronic things, in the sky, and people just be believing things. But this already happened. Kind of a thing just happened recently in the last year that got about 20% or more of the workforce to just stay home and try to get monthly checks. I know a lot of people right now that that's their view on life is, why work? I can get a check now.
Well, there's got to be something in life to strive for. I mean, yeah, okay, maybe that's good for a year and a half, 2 years, maybe. But then what? If life's not worth living, then what's the purpose of life? You see the plasma glyphs in the sky coming back in a once in a 2,000-year cycle. Keep your eyes to the sky. James Divine signing off. Friends out on 420 feet. Changes are here.
needle tears a hole, the old familiar sting. Try to kill it all away, but I remember everything. What have I become? My sweetest friend. Everyone I know goes away in the end, and you could have it all. My empire of dirt, I will let you down. I will make you hurt. I wear this crown of thorns upon my liar's chair, full of broken